Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast. Terry DuPont is the founder of DuPont Advisory Group, a group dedicated to providing comprehensive services to successful business owners, medical, and other professionals. Terry has top-of-the-table status in the prestigious International $1 Million Roundtable, placing him among the top 0.1% of all professional financial advisors in the world. Terry's philosophy is, I've learned that I grow and prosper more by focusing on the success of others, rather than fretting over my own. Terry is a certified financial professional with the Institute of Financial Wellness, an advisor for the Power of Zero Taxes in Retirement, chartered retirement plans specialist, certified wealth preservation planner, and certified philanthropic developer. On the podcast, Terry brings together experts in their field who have succeeded in building their business to share their secrets with you. And now, here's your host, Terry DuPont.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success. And I'm your host, Terry DuPont. This week, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us, and I'm fairly excited about it, we have Ben Golden, who's an enrolled agent, and he's very well-rounded when it comes to the tax dynamics, and I'll let him explain that to you. I don't want to steal his thunder. So, Ben, great to have you on the show. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Mr. DuPont. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Okay, great. Now, like I said, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know quite a bit of things about you, and you know, our paths have kind of crossed a little bit over the years, and you can touch on that. We didn't meet, but we were there. So, could you tell us a little more about you and your companies and why you started these companies?
Absolutely. So I'm very happy to. You know, I started in the accounting world, and I really wanted to help change lives. And after I got my master's degree, I bought a small practice, my first practice, after I had worked in corporate public accounting for several years. And, you know, as a small business, you take anybody on that's a client. You know, I think the qualifications are a heartbeat and a breath. I'm not really sure.
You just carry a mirror with you, and if they breathe, fog up.
Exactly right. If it fogged up, then they were a client. So I took a client on. He was in the logging industry, and one of the things I did was signed on his checking account because his guys were in the woods all the time, and they would come by my office, and I would just sign a payroll check, and they would take it and be on their merry way, you know. And lo and behold, he didn't pay his taxes. So one night, about 8 o'clock at night, he got a knock on the door, and there was an IRS agent there. There were actually two. And he calls me and said, Ben, what do I do? Well, I lived close by. So I was like, client, just sit tight, you know, get something to drink for him and just don't go back. Okay. So I literally showed up to his house, and I helped him walk through that wonderful conversation with the IRS agent. And lo and behold, the client owed about $171,000 to the IRS, back payroll taxes that he didn't pay. And so about 6 months later, we were walking through the steps and the process of him attempting to pay it back, and you know, we were getting everything filed, and lo and behold, I got a telephone call from the IRS agent one day, and she said, Mr. Golden, I want to let you know that tomorrow we will be levying your accounts, and you have the choice. I'm going to give you the choice to pay us the $171,000 on behalf of your client, or else you will be forced to pay it. And, oh, by the way, Mr. Golden, this is how much money you have in your 401k. This is how much money your house is worth. This is how much money your automobiles, you have 2 automobiles, and this is what they are. And this is how much they're worth. And this is the lien on them. And she gave me all of my personal information as to where my money was and how much money I had. And she said, Mr. Golden, if you liquidate everything, you can pay your client's burden. And I said, well, let's have a conversation tomorrow. I'll have an answer for you. And so, Terry, I went home that night, and I told my wife, I was like, look, baby, I'm going to put the kids down. After we put the kids down, I got some work I need to do back up the office. So, kiss the kids goodnight, really young kids, 1 and 3, 0 and 2 or something, really young. So I went back up, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, I found it. I had when I got my master's degree, I had an IRS procedure and policy class. And so I had a book from that. And when I was doing my research in that textbook, I found where the IRS made a mistake. And it's called a 4180 interview. And that interview told the IRS if I was a responsible party or not. And a responsible party means that you are responsible for the taxes, the payroll taxes. And that interview was not conducted. And because I was a signature on the account, she assumed I was. And once she assumed that I was a responsible party, she invaded my privacy by looking into me as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So, I decided that I would, of course, call her the next day. I said I would. So I called her the next day, and I decided that I wanted to take this up a couple levels because I didn't want this getting swept under the rug. So when I talked to her, I said, revenue officer, I didn't get your manager's information. I need your manager's name and number. And she's like, well, why do you need that? I said, I just need it. And I believe you're required to give it to me. So she gave it to me very reluctantly. She did not want to give me the information. This is back in the days, this was 20 years ago when you could actually call the IRS and they would pick the phone up. That's not today. But so I called the manager, and I told her, I was like, listen, there's a problem with this case. And I want the territory manager's name and number. And she said, well, why do you need that? And I said, well, I have proof that there's some problems. And she said, well, why don't you just give them to me and we'll go through them together? I said, no, I want to get the territory manager involved, and I want to get TIGDA involved. Now, TIGDA is let's call it the internal affairs of the IRS. So she said, okay. And so I talked to him. I called him all the same day. If you can believe that. I talked to him and I told him what happened.
You must have been a glutton for punishment.
I really was. I mean, I really was. But I got them all in one day. It was amazing. And so I told him what happened. And I said, the service has abused their authority, their power, and their discretion by violating my personal privacy. And she had no right to do what she did. So I want to get moving forward with the investigation. So everything with the client was put on hold for a while, because now the revenue officer was being investigated for abuse of a power, authority, and discretion. And so after the investigation, it was found that she, in fact, did violate my privacy rights. And so she was given 30 days off without pay. Now, for a government employee, that's a big thing, right? I mean, it doesn't sound big, but that's huge. She could never work a case if I was a practitioner on the case. And the client was put into what we call a currently non-collectible status immediately. So that means that the IRS they no longer attempted to collect from the client at that point. I think they did that because they didn't want me to sue them. I think I had a right to, but I felt like if I went down that route, it's like, scorched earth, burning bridges, and I just didn't want to do that, right? So that experience taught me truly how to become an advocate for my client.
Awesome.
And so, I think that the school of hard knocks, or the school of life, or whatever you want to call it, it teaches you, the ways of the world, and the way that you should go. And it really taught me that, if they're going to do this to me and I'm a professional, Terry, what are they going to do to the layperson? How are they going to treat somebody that doesn't know the rights? How
Right.
are they going to treat somebody that doesn't have a master's in tax and know where to go and look and research? What are they going to do? And so I knew what they were going to do.
Mhm.
And so that started the journey of why I wanted to become a tax resolution expert. And maybe we can get into, why I do other things now as well. But, to be a true advocate for the client, that's really the why. That's my why, because I just don't like a bully.
Yeah.
And the IRS, they're the three most feared letters in the alphabet, right? Especially when they're put together. So, I did not want the layperson to go through what I went through, because it was hard. I mean, I didn't tell my wife about it until literally, probably 5 years ago, because I did not want her. I did not want her to have that burden of knowing that, there's a target. There could be a target,
Right.
and you know, as business owners, there's always risk in what we do, but you know, that's not something that a business owner should have to deal with.
I
And
agree.
so that's pretty much my why.
I don't applaud getting behind on taxes, but I applaud you for doing what you do. So, you know,
Well, I mean, so people with tax problems, Terry, it's typically because they have a large event that happens in their life, and let me tell you what that looks like. Um, I had one client that his wife passed away, and she was the love of his life, and she handled all the finances, and he didn't know where they were on taxes, so he didn't file. And mentally he couldn't get there, so he went several years without filing, and then he looked up and said, well, I haven't filed, I'm gonna owe them money, what do I do? So that fear stopped him from filing a couple more years, and then the next thing you know, he can't buy a home, he can't buy a car, because he has no credit, he has no tax returns, and the snowball has gotten larger and larger. But it all happened because you know that grief just grabbed him and wouldn't let him go, and he's a good guy, but just bad circumstances. And that's really it's those kinds of stories that we get from a resolution standpoint, that from no fault of their own. And then, honestly, we do sometimes get that client that says, well, I owed money and I didn't know what to do, and I just didn't file. And then next thing you know, I didn't file for 3 years later. And then you've got the people that say, I filed but spent all the money. I
yeah.
spent all the money. I mean, as well as I do that some people are just not um, good with budgets and money, and they just spend every penny they got. So,
What if you could think of something? What would you feel the biggest challenge you faced is or was?
dealing with clients, or personally in business, which one?
Yeah, either one. Yeah, either one.
Dealing with clients, my advice to clients is file your taxes every single year, file them on time, even if you can't pay them. There are pathways you can get help with, that if you can't pay them, that there's ways that you can get that taken care of. However, don't let that stop you and put you in a place where it becomes something that bigger than what you can handle. You know what I mean?
Right.
So even if you can't pay them, go ahead and file.
Okay. Excellent advice. Yeah. Ben, with your extensive experience, what advice would you offer to individuals aspiring to enter the field of tax resolution and or tax planning?
Yeah. So,
And the second part of that is, are there any key lessons or insights you've gained over the years that would be valuable to newcomers?
absolutely. From a tax resolution standpoint, I mean, the statistics say that 85% of CPAs, enrolled agents, and attorneys don't like to deal with the IRS. So, if you're a practitioner, get in there and just roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty and go for it. Typically, and this is sort of bad to say, but typically there's not really anything you can do as a practitioner to make their situation worse than what it is. I mean, it's probably pretty bad. They owe the IRS 6 digits, right? You can't really make it worse. So if you have that perspective that I can only make it better, and that this person truly needs an advocate, then jump in, get your hands dirty, roll your sleeves up, and get to work. And don't be afraid. Fear is like a piece of paper that's a mile wide and a mile high, but paper thin, right? You can just punch through it easily. So don't let fear hold you back as a new practitioner. And then from a planning standpoint, start with yourself. Put strategies in place for yourself, and then you can talk to clients about, well, this is what I did for myself and this is why. But from a planning standpoint, you always look at where you want to go and what your goal is, and then what tools do we need to use to get to that goal, and then what does the implementation of those tools look like.
Excellent. The field of taxation is not only dynamic, but it's also subject to regulatory changes. How do you and your companies and your staff stay up to date with all the latest tax laws and regulations that ensure that the best possible outcomes are there for your clients?
That's a great question. And, it all boils down to one thing, and it's called discipline. So why do I say that discipline is so important? It is built into me every single day. I go and look at the tax court website to see if there's a new tax court case. I have regular scheduled continuing education every single year. I try to find an area that I'm weak in, and I learn as much as I possibly can about that area. And it's a continual movement towards education. And I think that mindset of, I can't know everything, but I want to learn at least one new thing, is a great type of mindset to have in the tax world. And also, it's the fact that there's no way possible for you to know everything. I like to give this analogy. So the Bible has about 670,000 words in it. Okay. Why don't you guess how many words are in the tax code, regulations, and case law?
I know that there's about 70,000 plus pages. So it's probably a lot more than the Bible.
So it's about 7 million words, right? So it's the code, case law, and regulations are 10 times larger. So I mean, there's absolutely no way somebody can know all of that, right? So pick the places that interest you the most, and the places where you feel weak, get the education to learn a little bit more about.
Yeah, excellent. Speaking of the Bible, I have to throw this out there because not many people realize this. If they thought about it, they know it. But I do a lot of retirement planning, advanced retirement planning in my business, along with tax planning for business owners, et cetera. But and it's funny that there's so much retirement planning going on out there when retirement is not in the Bible.
No, it's not. It's, there's an expectation that you have to work until you can't work anymore. I do believe that, the thought of retirement is that your children are supposed to take care of you in your twilight years. And that's the hope, right? But retirement in and of itself, I think that there's things that you never stop learning, and you never stop being able to help somebody. And so for me, I don't know that I'm going to retire anytime soon, because that passion to be an advocate is just so strong, because I just don't want people to go through what I've been through if I can help them in any way possible. You know what I mean?
I get you. Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Let's talk about the other side of what you do a little bit. What prompted you to start? Is it HSG accounting?
So it's Golden Tax Relief.
Okay.
HSG accounting was a prior company that I held, and back in 2014, I sold it on a fire sale. My father had a railroad construction company, and I bought it from him. His superintendent had some heart problems. My dad started having some heart problems. I sold my accounting firm. I bought his railroad construction company. And then several years later, I started in the resolution world. Apparently, I'm a glutton for punishment, because I wasn't working enough. One job isn't enough, right? So I started Golden Tax Relief, and we started with resolution. And when COVID happened, the IRS stopped forcing people to pay their tax bill and forcing people to file their taxes. So I saw in my key performance indicators in my business that everything was starting to slow down. And I knew that if I didn't shift quickly into another type of role or service, that it would be a tough year, right? So we moved into tax planning, tax advisory services, because of COVID and because the IRS slowed down on forcing people to pay their taxes. So that's the why I moved into the tax advisory services several years ago, and I believe we've been helping people ever since. I think that.
What's that entail?
Well, I mean, my philosophy on tax, if I can tell you real quick, is much like a tax court justice said in the 1950s. He said, "It is your duty as an American to pay your fair share. However, it does not make you more patriotic to pay more than your fair share." So to me, the code is either explicit or implied. It gives us the law to put strategies in place. A lot of people talk loophole. No. I believe in the law, and the law says that you can either do it, or it's implied that you can do it, and case law will back you up. So all of the strategies that we put in place have code, regulation, case law behind it as to the who, what, when, where, why, because I think that's a very important piece. Since I came from the resolution side of the world into the planning side of the world, I look through the window of tax resolution. So my question is, can I beat this in audit? So all of my tax plans that I do, I look at through the window of, can I beat this in audit? And very unique perspective, because the implementation of the strategy is just as important as the strategy. So I like to think, if the form of the strategy is done properly, the substance of the strategy must also match the form in order to beat an audit. Because if the form or the substance, and when I say substance, I mean the cash flow. If the cash flow does not flow properly to meet the form, then it doesn't matter. You're going to lose an audit. It's like not having receipts. You know, if you don't have a receipt, the chances are you're going to lose the deduction, right? So, you know, just like retirement, it's great if you set up a retirement plan, but if you never fund it, you're never going to get the advantage of the retirement plan, right?
I see. Yeah. What is something you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
The way I look at an ideal client now versus what I did when I first started is very unique, because I think that's one of the things I would go back and tell myself. I speak in stories quite a bit, and I use a mnemonic device. It's called FAT. You know, I want to be fat. I want to have clients that are fat. And FAT means flexible, adaptable, and teachable. And so, you know, I want to be somebody who's flexible and can change, or someone who's adaptable, somebody that's going to be able to adapt to a new situation easily, or trainable or teachable. Because I think it's a very important, because business is very, very messy. And it's just a matter of time before something happens and you're going to have to ask for grace. And grace cannot be, I don't think grace can be given unless, I don't think grace can be received unless it's given, right? So because of that, I believe that I would go back and tell myself, only take clients that are fat and believe in grace.
Good answer. How would you, and we're getting towards the end here, but how would you define success, or how do you define success?
So success to me is based off of failure. And so what does that mean? That means that in your mind, if you fail, to me, that should be a stepping stone towards success. A lot of people don't see that. However, you don't know what success is unless you know what failure is. And to me, success is growing and learning from the small failures for you to be able to get to the goal that you want to be at. And I think that you are the one to define that goal. I don't like to compare and say my success is X and your success should be Y. I think you define your own success. And so to me, success is building upon failure.
Okay. Excellent. Is there anything you wish to share that we haven't talked about?
From a tax planning standpoint, you know, you want to work with someone that looks at tomorrow, because a plan is something for tomorrow, and you must be proactive. So, you know, if you're working with someone, or if you ask your CPA or accountant or whomever's preparing your taxes, you know, what should I do in the future to help reduce my taxes? And they say, well, you make great money, you're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. If they make that statement, I would say, look, you need to find somebody that's going to look for putting strategies in place for tomorrow, because it's like a treasure hunt. You know, there is money under your feet. And the question is, can you get to it? And having the right team to help you get to that treasure is just as important as realizing there's treasure there.
You know, I don't think I could have said that any better myself. You know, there's a lot of good CPAs and accountants out there, but, you know, let's face it, Ben, most of them, the vast majority of them, don't have time to do any tax planning, because in order to make a decent earn or living, they have to have too many tax preparation clients. And when you have that burden, it makes it very difficult to be able to even have time, let alone learn how to do some of the tax plan. So
I heard a statistic the other day that said 95% of CPAs and tax preparers do not do planning. And so planning to me is looking forward and putting strategies in place for saving money tomorrow.
Well, and contributing more to your 401k plan is not exactly a tax planning.
It's not. It really isn't. I mean, it helps, but it's a type of deferral, and it's something that you probably should do, because in your twilight years, when you no longer can work, you don't want to rely on your family to do it. Like we were talking about before. I think it is an integral part of what a plan looks like, though. Deferral, having tax exempt income, and I don't mean like bonds or securities or anything like that. There are ways to have income that is exempt from taxes. Shifting taxes, shifting income. That's another way you can have a tax plan. But understand, using the strategies, you always start at what the goal you want to have is, and then get with someone. And I think your whole team, and that's what I really love about you there, Terry, is because it's like a chain. As a business owner, you have a chain or a team that works with you, and the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And typically that weakest link is the business owner, because you can't know everything about taxes and insurance and retirement and legal and HR. And I mean, you start going down the rabbit hole. You have to have people on your team that build and make up your chain, right? So when you start pulling your clients along, you need to have a strong team. And so for me, having someone that looks forward from a planning standpoint is so very important. But it's just as important as having the right insurance guy, is having the right attorney, is having the right wealth planner. I mean, there's so many other things that you must have in order to be, truly successful. And you define that success yourself. But, every business owner should have that team, and they should put it in place. I think that's the only thing that I would say that we haven't talked about yet. And that's what I love about you, is the fact that you understand the fact that having that chain put in place for that business is so very important.
Yeah. Good point. Well, Ben, with all your success, what would you say your biggest challenge today is?
I think educating the team to do it the way that I believe it should be done, and having the internal policies and procedures to make sure that the clients have a great outcome. I think those are some of the challenges that we're working with today. We've grown so much over the past several years. Our next challenge is to take a step back and internalize everything and make sure that every client has a wonderful outcome. And that's really our next challenge, I believe.
Okay. Excellent. Obviously, Ben, your information is down below, but just could you give our audience where they can find more about you, how they might get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So they can go check us out at www.goldentaxrelief.com. Or if they've got and that's for planning, if they have a tax problem, they can go check us out at www.IRS Trouble Solvers.com. We are headquartered in Alabama. We have an office in Chicago as well. However, we work with clients nationwide.
Excellent.
They can also call us at 844-229-8936, or they can email me at ben@goldentaxrelief.com.
Excellent. Well, our time's kind of up here, Ben. Unfortunately, I love talking to you. Maybe we can do more offline or something. But
absolutely, anyway. It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me today.
Oh, yes, thank you. So, folks, that's it for this week. Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success. I'm Terry DuPont, and come back next week. Thank you.
This has been the Better Business, Better Life, Building on Your Success podcast. If you have questions about creating tax-free wealth and income, forward-looking tax mitigation, strategic risk mitigation, wealth preservation and legacy planning, and advanced financial management, go to DuPontAdvisory.com or email Terry@DuPontAdvisory.com.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.